And hi, everybody. My name is Liz, and I'm here with my colleague Megan, and we're going to be conducting this webinar today on registering for a DUNS and a SAM number. Hopefully, it will demystify, as we've titled this, some of the common questions or issues that arise when trying to secure these federal identification numbers to qualify for grants. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Like I said before, the PDF version of this presentation is in the handout section. And if you have questions at any time during the presentation, please feel free to use the questions function of the webinar, and I will try to answer questions as they arise with whatever topic we are currently on at that time. All right, so where is my mouse? Ah, there it is. All right, so just to give an overview a little bit about the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture and the Massachusetts Farm Energy Program, which is overseen by the Center for Ecotechnology, that is who we are representing today. We have grant assistance for entities that are looking to secure REAP, MDAR grants, and then audit assistance as well. So we tend to help people with the USDA Rural Development grants and then the MDAR, Mass Farm Agricultural grants. And the common ones are, like I said, REAP and the MDAR. There's a couple, there's special projects in ag energy. We tend to focus on ag energy grants, and we also help provide audit assistance, which is often a precursor to qualifying for many of those grants. All right, so registering for a DUNS, understanding how to complete an application. So we're going to go over how to do it online, but first let's talk a little bit about what exactly a DUNS number is. So it's a copyrighted proprietary means of identifying a business's entity based on specific location information. It's a 9-digit number or character number, and it's provided by Dun & Bradstreet, who are the developers of the system. So it's completely free to get. You should never have to pay to get it. There are services online that tout will get you your DUNS and they make you pay a fee. You don't ever have to pay a fee to get a DUNS number, so I like to reiterate that many times. You apply online, and it can take up to 6 weeks for the number to come through. Typically, it's a lot faster than that, 2 weeks, maybe a little less if everything is entered properly the first time, and we'll get into how to enter everything next. All right, so the first thing when you go to the Dun & Bradstreet website, which if you just Google Dun & Bradstreet number, it will pop up and you can navigate your way to there. There will be a lookup, basically. You can look up your business to see if you already have a DUNS number. Key thing here is that when you look up your business, make sure you're using the name that is on whatever legal paperwork you use to register your business to file taxes. Sometimes the name on your taxes doesn't match those legal papers. So if, for example, you're a sole proprietorship or an incorporation, just if you have that paperwork handy and you know where it is, take a look at what you're registered as and what the business name is, because that will make the process just easier from the get-go. All right, so if you looked up your business and discovered you didn't have a DUNS, you would go to the registration. You'd click on Get a DUNS on their page. So the first thing is you as an individual will have to provide some of your information, and your information will also have to be validated. So there's this two-step process where you have your business's information, but you also have your information. In the instances of sole proprietorship, oftentimes a lot of this information is the same, but if you're an incorporated business, it's going to be a little bit different. So just having that in mind and knowing what type of business your business is really important. And then, again, like I said just a second ago, if you have the paperwork for how you were registered to pay taxes and whatnot with the state and the federal government, it would be helpful to have that on hand because it'll make sure you enter the proper information. So what I love about the DUNS registration process is there are these notes above each and every single section, and they really, really clearly lay out how you're supposed to do stuff. So this is one of those instances where it's follow the recipe, really follow the directions, and you should be all set, and it shouldn't take you too long. We tend to want to do things really fast, but in this case, take your time, make sure you've entered it the way it's asking you to enter it, and it should move forward. So the first section is your information. It's your legal first name and last name, and then it's the title of your business. And if you have any professional licenses, you can see that that one does not have a red asterisk on it, and that means it is not a required field. It is just an additional field that can be filled out. The contact information is then the information for the contact for your business. It may be you as the person who's signing on to register and then get the authentication, but it may be a general email for the business or just some other employee's email, depending on who is going to be maintaining the information or needing to access it. So that is this is the first half, I should say, of the main page that you'll be on. So the next box is the identity validation details. So this is now back to your personal information, and it says that in the note box there. It needs to be your home address, your home city, whomever the person is in the top two boxes. So whoever's first name and last name you're putting here, it needs to be your home address and everything in this third box. If it doesn't match, it's going to come back as an error, and you won't have successfully registered. So it's just important to note. So the second half of that main page, when you are starting this registration process, is the company info. So this is the name of the business, and so this is where having that what did my articles of incorporation or my sole proprietorship filing say about my business? How am I filed? If you're a sole proprietorship, again, great here in this note box, it's going to say it's your name, and it's probably formatted this way. If you are not, and you're an incorporation or 501c3 or a partnership, you likely selected a name in that paperwork, and that is the name you want to use in this case. If it doesn't match tax records, that's where you can hit a little bit of a snag, and it can slow the process down. You might have to redo the form here. And then you're going to provide the company address. It has to be an actual physical location. It can't be a post office box or anything like that. That won't be accepted by Dun & Bradstreet or the federal government. And so just make sure that you actually have a actual facility that has an address for which you can register. Then, of course, you have this fun "I'm not a robot" box, and you'll hit that and enter it. And enter. So that is basically it on registering for a DUNS. If you look up at this top bar here, so the personal info and the company info, and then it'll ask you to review details, and then you'll confirm and that everything you entered was correct, and then it'll give you an estimated time frame of which they expect to get you a DUNS. And you will be emailed. That's why you're providing the business email here. You'll get emailed the DUNS number when it is ready. Also, I should say that when you go through this process that we're demonstrating here today, it is both registering you for an account and then also getting you a DUNS. So you'll get that information as well almost immediately after you complete the application process. So we showed you step 1 and 2. You will have to review the details and request a confirmation, and then it'll say you're complete. So that's fairly simple, as long as, again, you have the correct information on hand. That can sometimes be more time-consuming than actually filling out this form. So just, if you have the ability, try to get your incorporation or sole proprietorship paperwork ahead of time, and that should ease your registration in this process. All right, so registering for SAM. This one's a little bit more complicated, and this is going to be the bulk of the presentation today. All right, so SAM, System for Award Management, is what SAM stands for. It's, again, a numeric identifier for your business, and it's specifically given to you by the federal government. You can only get a SAM number once you have a DUNS. So you have to get the DUNS first. You have to go through the previous process we just talked about before you can go to sam.gov and get a SAM cage code. They're called cage codes. You can also just hear them referred to as SAM numbers, but on forms it oftentimes will be called a cage code, so it's just good to know that lingo. This one again can take 2 to 6 weeks. If everything matches the way you filled it out on your DUNS application, it's going to go through a lot faster. If it doesn't, it's going to take longer. We've worked with many entities of which we've had issues here and there because things don't match exactly. So this is one of those cases where it has to match exactly, and if it doesn't, you're going to run into a bit of a snafu. So when you go to the SAM web page, this is what you're going to see. You're going to have a couple options. It's create a user account, register or update an entity, and then you can search records as well. If you have never registered for SAM, you're going to need to create a user account. If you think you might have, but you don't know, you can go up to the top of the page and say, I forgot my username or I forgot my password. And there's also, I should say, the Federal Service Desk, which is a separate website. They can help you if for some reason you've lost your username and password, and you can either text, chat with them, or email them, or call them, and they will help you figure that out. That's the Federal Service Desk. Again, it's the kind of a separate entity that helps with all of these other online platforms and helping people navigate through. So we're going to go through registering an entity, assuming that you've already created a user account. It's really important to note here that creating a user account does not register you as an entity to get a SAM cage code. So those are two different processes. You can do both at once. However, you need the user account before you can register or update an entity. So that's just important to note. There's two kind of separate processes that are kind of back to back if you haven't haven't registered as a user. So once you've registered as a user, that's great. This is what your main page is going to look like. It's a little bit longer than this. We've cut it into two pieces just so you can, just so we can kind of highlight some aspects of it. The biggest thing you want to pay attention to, and I'm going to go to the next slide, is that sidebar. So if you look at what the main page looks like, this sidebar right here is really important. It's going to tell you where you are in the system, and that's really helpful.
So if you go back to that other page, the thing that confuses a lot of people is those big blue buttons look like you can click on them and go there, and you actually can't. You have to use the sidebar to navigate. They're just a lie.
Yeah, so this sidebar is how you navigate. These are just descriptions of what it is that you can do there. So existing entity registrations, register new entity. So that's what that is. So the second half of the page looks kind of like this. If you are looking to register, there is a start registration all the way at the bottom of the page. It's really not intuitive to have to scroll all the way to the bottom to do that. So you can register doing that, and you can also, I believe, click on the sidebar, and it'll give you that option as well. So once you hit start registration, this beautiful little pop-up box is going to pop up for you, and it's going to tell you absolutely everything you need in order to complete a registration. Do not skip reading this. Make sure you have everything they're asking you for. So obviously, we've mentioned this. We just went over your DUNS number. You need your DUNS number. But you also need the legal business name and the physical address from your Dun & Bradstreet record. So whatever you filled out for Dun & Bradstreet is what you're going to need to fill out in the SAM registration. You also need your taxpayer identification number. If you're a sole proprietorship, that's usually your social security number. If you're an incorporated business or a partnership, you likely have a separate TIN number, which is a taxpayer identification number that's not associated with a social security. So just, you can take a look at your IRS forms, your 1099 or your W-2 to see what the taxpayer name and numerical code is. So then you also need your bank account information. You need not only your bank account number and your type, but you also need your routing number. So it's important to have all that information, because the final step of this process is to provide bank account information so you can receive payments of grant awards. Some, I will caveat here, we'll give the caveat that even though you are required to have a SAM cage code, not all grant agencies provide payment through the SAM system. So you may have to do this just because you're required to do it, but you may end up getting paid in a different way. So just know that. So once you have those three chunks of information handy, then I would say continue with your registration. So the next page that's going to pop up is, what is the type of entity or business that you're registering, that you're trying to get the SAM cage code for? Most everyone is going to be a business or an organization. That can include nonprofit, for-profit, and whatnot. The rest is all kind of government entities. And then the second portion there is asking you why you're registering, and it's just the second option. You're typically applying for federal assistance unless you're a business that's going after federal contracts and procurement opportunities, in which case you would choose the previous one above. But most people we work with are going after federal assistance opportunities like REAP grants or maybe NRCS funding and some other types of funding. So then, here it comes, the unique identifier number. So here is where you're going to have to enter your DUNS number. Again, it has to match exactly as it is given to you in the email saying once you've received it. And then the physical address, so again, or in the legal name. So all of this should be available on your DUNS registration page. If you recently registered, you might have just taken notes, and that will be easy. But you can also, when I've worked with people before, I've actually had them log in dual and look at what was on DUNS and what was on SAMS. And again, if you copied it directly off of your tax registration and your company and corporation information, it should be fairly straightforward. But this is the process that we tend to notice people have the most problems with, because the legal name, I'm going to give this example. If you were a sole proprietorship like we talked about in the DUNS section, your legal name is entered in a very specific format, and so if it's not entered in that specific format here, you're going to run into a snag and say, we don't recognize this, you are not an entity. So just notice the exact formats in which things are entered for the Dun & Bradstreet so that you can make sure that it's entered here properly and you won't run into those errors. Same thing with the physical address, make sure it matches, and you should be golden. So once you have done that, you're going to be asked a little bit of information about your business. Your business start date, oftentimes people, if they don't have like I was saying, the articles of incorporation or the tax filings, you don't know when your business started. We usually say, well, do you know what year you started? And if you know what year you started, choose January 1st of that year. That's usually not an issue. And then fiscal year close date, if you file your taxes normally with everybody else, it's the calendar year. Some entities do not. They have a different fiscal year, closer to the federal or the state fiscal years, which run October 1 to September 30th, and then state fiscal years run July 1 to June 30th. So just make a note of that. You're likely just with the calendar year, and it should be simple as that. So the company division name is just, again, the company's name. You can provide a URL here if you want, but it is not required. And then this next thing here with the asterisk, to create and enter your MPIN. People get really confused in this. This is a number you are creating. You get to choose what that number is. And it's just a number that will help you, help make sure that you're the authorized person actually accessing information. So it protects your information, and it kind of acts as a password.
And so you see right below it says what it has to have in it.
Yep. Yeah, so you can see that you have to have 9 characters. It has to contain at least 1 letter, 1 number, and it can't have any spaces or special characters. So whatever combination of numbers and characters makes sense to you, I would say utilize that, and then file that number in either a really easily recallable vault in your brain or on paper somewhere in your filing cabinet. So again, then the next thing is your physical address. Where is the business located? Again, this should match DUNS. When in doubt, match the DUNS information, and you should be golden. All right, so your taxpayer identification number, I talked about this a little bit just a second ago. If you are a sole proprietorship, it's likely your social security number. If you're a 501c3 or a corporation, it is likely a TIN. Again, the TIN is on your taxes, on your 1099 or on your W-2. It's going to be your social security. So just have that handy and go ahead and enter that. And then that number will be what shows up below. So if you choose TIN type, it'll be SSN is Social Security, or it'll be TIN, and then this is where you'll enter the number. All right, so once you've done that, I'm just also going to point out here, there's all these, this sidebar is demonstrating how far along in the process you are, and so just keep that in mind. So the next portion of this is a little, it can be a little bit more convoluted for people. So the business information, they want to know your country of origin. It's likely the United States, and it's likely the state of Massachusetts. It may not be. You may have your home site somewhere else and then a satellite site in Massachusetts, and that's the site that's going after a grant. That's fine, but you do need to know, it does need to know the state, and it has to match whatever, again, your articles of incorporation or your registration paperwork says. So the security level, all this information you can basically leave blank. It doesn't really matter. This is not required information. Then you'll have business type. So does your entity qualify as the following? If non-applicable, select non-applicable. So we have this little box that we have opened here. And so this is, if you are any of the following, you select them, but you won't be. You will be likely a business or a sole proprietorship, so you would select not applicable. And then if you are, again, this is something you shouldn't be certified by, you likely aren't certified by a state agency, and so you would just, you would select no. You might have a disadvantaged business enterprise, and if you do, you'd select yes. And you would likely know that if you were going through this process, because you would have the paperwork as registered as such an entity. All right. So the next section, again, is your business organization one of the following? You will likely choose not applicable. These are the ones that it shows up. It's, are you a tax exempt, or you corporate, or you, so if you're none of those, you'd select not applicable. If you, and then you indicate who you are as a business as defined by the IRS. Again, that's going to be kind of on your tax information, and this goes back to how are you registered to pay your taxes? Are you a sole proprietorship? Are you a partnership? Are you a corporation and whatnot? So just having that, again, that paperwork on hand will help. And so in this case, we selected sole proprietorship, and you are likely a for-profit. You might be a nonprofit, and that's fine too. And then you can also select any of these. If you happen to be a veteran-owned business, a women-owned business, or a joint-owned business, you can select any of those at this time. The only things required on this page are indicate the form of your business and then the profit structure. So that's the only two things that are required on this page. The rest is kind of, if you would like to fill it out, you can, but you don't have to. All right, like I mentioned before, that sidebar is going to demonstrate where you are in the process of the registration, so pay attention to that. If you want to navigate to those specific sections, I believe that in the registration process, you can actually click on them and go to one place. The one thing I will say is that I think you have to, it goes in order. So you couldn't jump to executive compensation questions if you hadn't filled out financial information. So, but once you have a checkbox next to something, you can navigate in between. So once you've filled everything out, you will be given a tracking number, and basically it is your DUNS number, and then
You just put in the DUNS number.
Yeah, you don't need the +4. It's just the DUNS number, and then it'll pop up. Your status will show up like this. It'll say, basically, it'll be yellow if it's still in process. It'll be green if it's complete, and it'll be no color if it's not started.
To go through this process that we were working through to make the slides, we could only go so far because we were just sort of making up the information. So you can see the core data still in progress. POC is points of contact. That's one of the last things that's filled out. Then whether or not you submitted it, and then usually it sits in processing for a while. When these are complete, it has a big green check mark in it, so there's absolutely no doubt what's happened.
You also get an email.
Yeah.
You should get an email.
You get a lot of emails saying, like, you've done this, you created an account, you successfully submitted the thing, it's being reviewed by the IRS said okay, the IRS said no. Right. When you are finally done, when it flips over to active, you'll get a 4 or 5 digit code.
Yes, yeah.
I think it's 4. It's a combination of letters and numbers, and that's your stamp code, and then you also get an expiration date for it, which is typically a year from
when you registered.
When you registered.
And that's important to note. You are responsible for maintaining the up-to-dateness of your SAM-CADE code. It requires that you go in a minimum of once a year and say, yep, all this information is still accurate, and oh, I don't need to get updates. Thanks, computer. All this information is up to date, and right. we're all set. So you are required to do that once a year. If you have a grant that most grants require follow-up, even if you get it and you install your equipment and you're reimbursed, you're required for a minimum of 2 years to keep the SAM up to date because you have follow-up from that grant. The granting agencies typically will want follow-up on the performance of whatever you got the grant for 2 years. I think for renewable systems it's 3 years, so just keep that in mind. You will have to keep this up to date, and if it's not, you might run into some issues, but usually they'll just be like, you didn't update this, please update it. And similar to the DUNS, if anyone contacts you and is like, oh, pay us $300 to update your SAM, don't do that. No, this is all completely free. We can't reiterate that enough. There's a lot of people out there that will offer to pay to do it for you, though. If you feel like you need help or you aren't sure if it's been updated or you've been contacted by someone sketchy, let me know. Let us know. And we can help. That we'll actually sit down with you and walk you through the entire process from that core data that we kind of just went through to the points of contact and the submitting and the processing. In this case, you can see that I forget, these are X'd out because you don't need to do them. I've never done those. They must be for government things. Assertions and reps and certs have to do with if you're going after federal contracts, and if you're not, you don't have to fill out those sections. So that's why those will always show up with a gray, not required, because it's not required. So, and you can see down there it says not required. So, all right, I think that is it. Yep. If there are any questions, please ask them now. You can use, I'll choose not to unmute people because on Tuesday everybody just muted themselves. So if you have any questions, go ahead and use the question box. It doesn't appear that anybody has any questions, so hopefully we've answered all of them prior to you needing to ask them, which was hopefully the goal of this presentation. And and if you would like some one-on-one help or anything, that's what we're here for. Get in touch with us. Yeah. So you can contact us. We did record this webinar and we will provide it to those that registered. And the deadline for REAP is October 31st. Yep. So it's a good time to start this process now and make sure you have all the numbers squared away before you submit. Because you have way more than 6 weeks at this point. So hopefully it won't take that long. Yeah. So hopefully it won't take that long for either of the numbers. And that is it. Thank you for, doesn't look like anybody's asking questions. So thank you for attending today. Like we said, if you have any questions, please feel free to email us or contact us in any other way, and we'll be happy to help. We hope we found this helpful. Yeah, and we'll send out an email, I think early next week, not on Labor Day, but after that, with a link to the recordings in case you want to see it again or share it with your friends. Yeah. So, all right, thank you so much for attending. Hope you have a great rest of your Thursday and a fabulous Labor Day weekend. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. All right. Oh, wait, somebody has a question. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. All right, thanks so much. We're going to end the webinar now, and like I said, ask any questions later via email or phone if you need to. All right, thank you.